My name's Peter Weddle. TAtech Live is our weekly webcast about all things related to talent technology and talent acquisition. We want to shine a spotlight on some of the companies and the individuals who are really doing innovative work and creating new ideas in our space. Today, we're going to focus on one of the members of the TAtech network, JobGet. We're going to explore the inside scoop on JobGet's acquisition of RippleMatch. But before we get started, just to sort of lay the groundwork, there have been two primary trends in recruitment technology merger and acquisition. The first, of course, got a lot of visibility. You might call them tuck-in acquisitions, where large HR tech companies acquire recruitment technology companies to make more real their value proposition as an end-to-end HCM resource. You saw that with SAP SuccessFactors acquiring a company and also Workday acquiring Paradox. The other kind of acquisition is recruitment technology companies acquiring other TA solution providers in order to offer employers a more complete portfolio of recruiting resources. And a great example of that is, in fact, JobGet's acquisition of RippleMatch. So please join me in welcoming our guest today, the GM at JobGet, Dan Sapir. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Peter. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So let's begin with introductions. Tell the viewers, if you would please, a little bit about yourself and about JobGet.
Sure. So my name's Dan Sapir. I am the GM of JobGet. I've been in the talent acquisition space for about 20 years at this point. I've been with JobGet for about 4 years. So JobGet is the home of the everyday worker. Our goal is to connect everyday workers and everyday talent with great opportunities at employers. And our main focus across all of our brands has been really removing the noise and making sure that there's the right amount of friction to get the right job seekers hired at those employers.
So just so we're all singing off the same sheet of music, what do you mean by an everyday worker?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would consider that a catch-all term. So we used to say hourly, but that's really not all we focus on. It's everything from hourly to frontline workers to trucking to healthcare. I think of it almost as a catch-all term for like folks that are not really in the white collar space. So I think you and I would probably not go run around on any of the JobGet properties. But if you're earlier career or or frontline working, we'd be a perfect home for you to look for a role.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're going to talk about JobGet's acquisition of RippleMatch, and I guess the place to begin is how did the deal come together? Did you know each other before you got down seriously to talking about joining up, or was there an intermediary involved? How did it all happen?
Yeah, so personally, I've known RippleMatch since they were born, actually, right? I think that they've done a great job of building a really good name in the space. There are only a few different platforms out there focused on internships and early career, matching. And they've done a really fantastic job of just commanding in that space. And I think they're really well known for quality of interaction, quality of products. So I've personally known of them for a very long time. As far as the deal was concerned, I think it was more of a they were kind of out there looking a little bit, and we got introduced to a third party kind of connecting us.
So as far as RippleMatch was concerned, then it was really a timing. This was the right time for them to look for an acquisition or a partner of some kind. Is that really?
Yeah, I would say it's both, right? So JobGet, generally we are an acquisitive company. We are always looking for companies that can be synergistic to our overall goal, which is helping remove noise for employers and job seekers and making that connection happen in a better way than ever, and making sure that we have more connections to job seekers and employers alike, right? So it wasn't necessarily like they were looking around. I mean, it's a two-way street there, and ultimately, it was the right time and the right product sets for both of us.
So well, that's a great segue into what I wanted to ask you next was, how do you see this adding to your value proposition? What was the value of the acquisition from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think RippleMatch already works with a lot of really strong logos, and they work with job seekers as well, right? So they are a marketplace kind of similar to what JobGet does in certain fashions, but they're focused on a what I would call like the next stage of somebody's career versus what JobGet historically has, right? So I talk about hourly workers, I talk about frontline hospitality, whatever it is. It's usually it's earlier in your career or path a lot of times, and ultimately RippleMatch is focused on internships as well as early career hiring, right? Now, certain folks stay in the hourly space forever, but sometimes, that's also, hey, that's before I went to college. That's before I decided to go the white collar route. So we think about from a job seeker journey, it's kind of the next stage in that iteration of their life cycle. And then on the employer side, we actually have a lot of clients in common, but we're working in very different groups, right? And certainly we have a lot of clients not in common as well. So we think that the overall universe of our forces combined can do more for whether it's companies we're working to on both sides or one or the other. We see that as something we can kind of help all around. Now, I'd say that the other piece that's like synergistic is everything that we've been building at JobGet and the rest of our properties is how do we get job seekers through the funnel at a better clip, right? So in high volume hiring, we've been focusing a lot on, let's plug directly into the applicant tracking system. Let's plug directly into the local hiring manager's, calendar. And that way we can kind of, get somebody through the apply process, text them, ask them a couple more questions if they're a good fit, get them to show up to that local hiring manager's office when they're ready for it. And then the local hiring manager can actually do the interview, right? So we add friction where it should have friction, but we're like, we're not making people jump through hoops just to get rid of bots and, get rid of noise, right?
Right.
On the other end, if we start thinking about what RippleMatch does for sourcing, they are a matching platform, right? So people can apply to job. Ultimately, before they can even apply to a job, they're creating profiles. They're understanding, what that job seeker's background is. They're understanding what they want. And a lot of companies actually get this really wrong in internship world because they don't have the traditional resume to go kind of do the matching off of. So RippleMatch does a really great job of that. And on the other end of that, a job seeker is not doing what and where searches. They're getting matched to jobs that are actually a good fit for them based on what they've self-identified on, based on their skill sets. And on the other end of that, what the employers say, hey, I'm looking for these skill sets. So employers love that because they're actually matching the right job seekers. They don't get a whole bunch of noise of a million applies happening. They get a few applies, and they are people that are hireable for that job, right? So it removes noise, which once again, in both of these scenarios, our goal is to have the right amount of friction so that the right job seekers are making connections to the right employers. So we can take off the burden of going through a million applies and actually look at high intent job seekers that are actually qualified for that role. And that way, in the RippleMatch world, they're getting a few applies and they can actually go interview the people that are actually a good fit, which is super critical in today's world where, once again, it's so easy to auto apply to, there's bots, there's just so much noise. And we're trying to get rid of that so that we can actually make those quality connections.
So I'm intrigued by their focus on internships because, you hear so much, particularly from the youngest cohort in the workforce, that they keep getting asked by employers, what's your experience in X, what's your experience in Y? They haven't had an opportunity to get that kind of experience. So internships is one way to make them career ready, if you will. Yep. How does RippleMatch acquire enough information about these early stage job seekers to be able to match them with internship opportunities?
Yeah. So the great part about people ready for internships is they are They are hungry. They're willing to give a lot of information, frankly. And as they fill out their profiles, we're understanding what school they went to. We understand what clubs they're part of. We're understanding what their background is. We actually even have some job seekers will take assessments to say, hey, I truly do have this skill set and this certain engineering language, for example, or AI proficiency. So we do have a lot of ways for job seekers to kind of self-select into information or even take tests before even applying to a job. And all of that information does help us make better matches. Now, obviously, not everyone is going to sit through a 20-minute assessment or whatever. We see that in every part of the talent acquisition ecosystem. It's very difficult. But honestly, the more they give, the better matches we can make, right? And then it shortcuts their path to getting hired for an internship or otherwise. But yeah, we focus quite a bit on that. It is difficult, and you get different people filling out different levels and quality of information. But ultimately, the more they put in, the better of a time they're going to have interacting with the ecosystem as well as the employer.
Do you find the everyday worker more willing to sit through building profiles, sit through providing more information, or is that still something that, I mean, they just want to get it done? They want to look at what's available in the marketplace.
Yeah, I would say everyday workers are the least likely to give all that information out of any group, honestly, because they are the most taken advantage of. They, just like whether it's white collar or otherwise, there's a lot of black holes. We all hear about that a lot in our space. A lot of times in the everyday worker world, when somebody says, hey, I need a new job, they're just looking for something with a better commute, making a little more money. It's almost like transactional, and they're sort of like, whatever's the first one to respond is really the one I'm going to kind of go down the path of. So in everyday worker world, we try and keep as little friction as possible in the process, and make sure, of course, we're getting the right information. But the real magic in friction is getting them into the interview, making sure that they're a good fit in a human interaction, and that's really where that needs to be made. We have the right amount of friction, so it's not like, hey, here's a bunch of bots or low intent job seekers.
Right.
So you'll see, we'll take them through an apply process. We'll follow up with them to make sure that we're further vetting them. They are actually interested in the role and they're interacting, and then we get them scheduled. But yeah, to answer your question directly, everyday workers do not want to fill out a whole bunch of information, and for good reason, right? They're just trying to find something quick a lot of times.
Exactly.
And they've been, they've been treated the worst out of all job seekers, I think, in the ecosystem as a cohort.
Gotcha. So, what's your goal for the two companies? Are they going to operate as separate entities? Are you going to bring RippleMatch under the JobGet umbrella? How does that work?
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of both, and we've done this for a number of companies. I think that there is the direct employer motion, let's call it. We want to go to a direct employer and say, hey, we can solve your everyday hiring needs. Like let's say it was a hotel chain, right? They're going to need kind of everyday worker cohorts. A lot of them have internship programs, and a lot of them have early career programs as well, right? We want to say, hey, we can solve multiple things for you without creating a bunch of noise, focusing on quality and just getting you hires in the door, right? And so throughout all of that on the front line, we see motions that could be synergistic in having a single point of contact, whether it's your sales or CS person. But what we solve for an everyday worker is slightly different than what you want in terms of filtering and matching, et cetera, for your early career, and which is actually even different than your a year or two out of college versus an internship. So we do foresee them being different ways to interact with job seekers as well as employers, but almost like a one-stop shop for each one of those kind of pockets of employers and job seekers alike.
I think that's such a smart strategy. We've talked a lot in various episodes of this particular series about what ails job boards. And in fact, next week, we're talking to George LaRocque about his report, Job Boards Aren't Dead, Their Business Model Is. But it seems to me that one of the best paths forward for job boards is to do what you're doing, and that is create a portfolio of resources so that an employer doesn't have to go to 6 or 7 different providers, but instead can get, as you were saying, internships and early career programs, and everyday workers can get a range of resources from one provider, so that if they aren't doing uh, recruitment advertising right now here, they might be doing internship programs over there, and there's that opportunity to keep engaged with the employer, which is really the secret sauce of business success, it seems to me.
I tend to really agree with that. And I also think it's interesting saying, job boards aren't dead. Their model is, right? I think for so long, we focused on, it used to be pay per post. Then it's like, hey, here's a cost per click, here's a cost per apply. But like, not all applies are created equal, right? Like I could give you 500 applies to the same job, and you only need 10 people to get to a hire, right? So 490 of those are actually wasted, right? So what we're trying to do is making sure we're load balancing that, whether it's in internship or early career or everyday workers. We're trying to make sure that we have good signals back and forth to say, hey, here's what I need, hires, and here's how many applies I need to that, and here's what's happening with those. And so all of our systems that we're working on are meant to plug into to the ATS to get signals back, and we're really, really focused on quality. Like that's all we care about. And what's great about today is like you don't have to focus on CPA as the only quality signal you're getting back. There's a lot of down funnel information you can get, whether that's hires happening or anything else. And both of these ecosystems, whether it's JobGet for frontline high volume hiring, or it's for internships, the signals are there for us to take advantage of.
Well, as you said, this is not your first time around this track. JobGet has acquired other companies, Snag a Job, Seasoned, for example. So, based on your experience, what is the biggest challenge for a company in our space who's thinking about an acquisition? What's the biggest challenge to make sure that you get the return on investment that was initially used to justify the acquisition in the first place?
There's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot of technology synergies that you got to be aware of. I think there's just the vision overall, right? Like, do you have the right hypothesis in the first place? And then just getting it out there and making sure you're going to market with it, right? I think that it's funny. I was talking to some of the team on the RippleMatch side on, hey, what's our plan? How are we going to go get out there and make sure that we're evangelizing the product? And certainly I have my biases of paths that work well, but like you have to be open to it not working well and then iterating towards whatever will work well. So I would say you should come with a hypothesis for sure, but you shouldn't be so rigid that like if that is not coming to a fruition the way you thought it was going to, that you can't pivot in some fashion there.
Now, we've heard a lot of commentary and even some research on the fact that remote work places a strain on cultural synergy in an organization. So when you have multiple companies, as you have at JobGet, operating as separate entities, how do you create a common culture that defines what JobGet stands for, what its vision is, to use your term?
Yeah, and we are remote first, right? So all of our companies generally are not going to an office and getting everyone together, right? And it is very hard to keep that culture together, right? So we try and have regular connections. We try and be as transparent as possible with our teams and our organization on what we're doing, what our goals are, how we're delivering against those goals. Just meeting regularly and transparency is really the name of the game there. But once again, I do. I've worked for in-person companies, and the culture is a bit different there, and it is difficult to replicate in person, honestly. But I also think you can get the best talent in the world if you are remote. So there are best benefits to both sides.
So let's go back to the beginning. You guys obviously knew this company before. As you said, you had a personal relationship with them. Do you think that that's the key to making a successful acquisition. You sort of have some relationship previous to the acquisition, and you build on that, you nurture that relationship to get to the point where an acquisition makes some sense. Or, have you had in the JobGet portfolio other companies where you just didn't know them before, but you did the due diligence, you went through the financials and so forth, and made an acquisition decision?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I would say we've made some acquisitions that are more successful than others, and those that have been the most successful, we have some sort of relationship, or we don't have a relationship, but like they're a competitor and we know them very well for another reason. Even in that, like I'm half joking on that. Like Snag a Job, very similar missions, very similar audiences, etc. We were buying traffic, candidate flow from each other. Like we worked together in a lot of different ways. So we while we didn't like hang out the bar together, so to speak, like we knew each other well, right? We knew their model, and it was we knew well beforehand that it could be very synergistic if we could make it all work, right? The ones that worked less so, I would say, are the ones where it was more on paper, looked like this might make sense, and we didn't know much about their business, and we're like, hey, let's give it a shot. Obviously, we did a lot more due diligence than that, but
Sure.
those were the ones that were like just more difficult, and they were further out of our realm, and it was less synergistic and more like thought to be opportunistic. So I would say to be the most successful, certainly if you know their business and you've seen them in the space and you've seen the goodness they have, that's where you're going to see the most the best outcomes in my experience.
Great. So, any other thoughts that you'd like to share with the folks watching the show? As you can see from the chat stream, lots of people are here. Any other thoughts about what makes a successful acquisition? What are sort of the touch points that you guys think are really important in order to bring a company into the fold that really works for your value proposition?
Yeah, and once again, I think it depends on what and why you're making an acquisition of that nature. I would say that the integration time is always key. Having a clear thought on why you're doing it and how you get to where you want to go is also key. And then just making sure you're executing on it. I mean, once again, measuring, executing, etc. When you acquire a company, you think something's going to happen. It's never exactly the straight line that you hope for. So you have to be able to pivot where it makes sense, and just make sure you're acquiring for a good reason and have clarity around that. And so far, like I said, I mean, we've taken a bunch of companies together and seen some pretty interesting things that we weren't going to get there by ourselves, just organically growing, at least in the time periods that we have. So coming back specifically to RippleMatch, we're really excited about how they help expand our depth in terms of how we can interact with our employers and job seekers alike through their own journeys and careers over time. I think it's very synergistic, and we're excited to kind of see it come together.
Great. Okay, final question. Without asking you to spill the beans, what's next for JobGet? Are you still in the acquisition mode? Are you still looking to build out a further portfolio of resources?
Yeah. So look, we're always looking to grow, and that can be organically and that can be inorganically. We're always open to both, and I would say we're always looking at partners. We're always looking at ways to grow in organic manners. So I don't have any beans to spill today, but I wouldn't say not to foreshadow anything either. But I wouldn't be surprised if you heard more from us in terms of acquisitions in the future.
Well, there you have it. A TAtech network member, JobGet, has built just a impressive portfolio of capabilities for the everyday worker, a worker who's joining the workforce for the first time through an internship, and also early career job seekers. So thanks, Dan, very much for joining us today. It was a great introduction to your company and what you've done with acquisitions, and best of luck going forward, whether there are beans out there or not. So thanks very much for joining us. And thanks to all of you who are out there. we here at TAtech work very hard to make sure that companies like JobGet get the spotlight that they deserve on the hard work, the good work that they're doing, and also on all the tough issues that we face in this industry. And one of those will be, as we were talking about earlier, just what is the future for traditional job boards. And that'll be my guest next week, George LaRock, the founder of WorkTech. So please come back and join us for that particular show. So thanks very much for being here today, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye
Thanks,
now.
Peter. Talk to you later.